Hello, everyone. If you're watching this, it's time to take your midterm outline and move it forward into a draft. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So right now, you probably have something that looks like this in front of you for your midterm. You may have fleshed out your different points to different degrees, or you may have a different style of outline. But basically, this is what you're working with. And you might be wondering, how do I move this into an actual draft of a paper? Well, where do you start, right? How do you begin? What's the easiest part to start with? The first thing that I would recommend doing is deciding on the outline order. So you might have a visual map with different pieces and different parts, or you might have it already linearly in the order that you want it to be in. But if you haven't decided yet, think about, where do I want to start with this paper? Like, what do I want to talk about first, especially for your body paragraphs? And how do I want to end it? And what goes in the middle? The most logical order to me for this would be to cover your journey to suckage and talk about, how to do, end up picking what you did for your activity. Does your family do it and you've never done it? Did your friend dare you to try something? Do you feel like you've always sucked at this? What is the story there? Then go into your evidence of suckage. This is when you actually tried the activity and you're talking about how you know that you were bad at it, or how you know that at the very least you were new at it, even if you were kind of a natural, right? For most people, this might look like comments that other people are making. This could be a funny story. This could be you messing something up, whatever comes to mind as far as evidence, but show me that you suck at it, okay? Or show me how you know that you suck at it. Last but not least, we have our lessons learned portion. And you'll remember that this is the part where you talk about what you've learned from this experience that you might be able to apply to another area of your life. It could be something as simple as, I had a horrible experience and I will never try surfing again, right? Or hopefully it's better takeaways for you, like, I learned a little bit of resilience. I learned how to laugh at myself. I learned to let go of some anxiety so that next time I try something new, or next time that I feel like I've messed something up, maybe it won't be so bad, right? You also need to make sure that you're tying it back to Rinaldi's book here, okay? So you can agree with her and you can say, this really demonstrates what Rinaldi was talking about. Or if you disagree, you can say that too. And you can say, I don't feel like my experience was the same as Rinaldi's. Here's how it was different. Here's what Rinaldi said. Here's my experience that differs or contrasts with that. Okay, but you need 2 lessons learned and 2 connections to the book. So that to me feels like a natural flow, but whatever works for you, as long as it makes sense. When you go to actually write it, my advice is to start with the easiest part. Typically, that's not the introduction. Writing that full introduction out first can be difficult because you haven't written the paper yet. So it can feel like introducing someone you haven't met. Now, you might be thinking, we already talked about introductions a little bit and thesis statements. That's good. You need a thesis statement to know where you're going with the paper. And you want to keep your eye out for good hooks as you're doing the activity, right? Something to hook your reader in. But if that's not the easiest part to really nail down at this point for a draft, go ahead and move on to one of the body paragraphs. If it's easier to talk about a lesson learned, start there. If it's easier to talk about evidence of suckage, start there, and then go back and write the paragraph before that, okay? Last but not least, make sure that you are revisiting the prompt, the thesis statement and introduction lectures, and the rubric to make sure that you have all necessary components. There's nothing that saddens me more than coming across a student paper and realizing that they missed an essential component of it, and if they'd only checked the rubric, they would have that, I'm sure. Don't lose points unnecessarily, right? Make sure you have everything that you need for this. Okay, speaking of rubrics, I do want to do a little rubric review here. You can see sort of a condensed version of it on the screen. If you want to pull it up for yourself, that might be easier to read. But the first thing that you definitely want to tell your reader is your topic. What did you suck at? What was the thing that you focused on trying and now you're going to write about in this essay? The second thing that you want to do is tell us evidence for your suckage and explain why this matters, why this activity matters. And then the third thing that I would recommend doing is explaining 2 or more lessons learned and how those tie back to the book. Okay, so that organizational suggestion that I just gave you ties directly into the rubric here for full points. And this adds up to 70% of your paper, these elements. The remaining ones, organization. This is like, are you connecting your ideas? Can I follow you through it? And then grammar length and MLA format is last here. Okay. The lessons learned is really the key part. This is worth the most amount of points. This is what you want to focus on. All right, let's talk a little bit about integrating the text or that example of lessons learned, because this is the most important point. Like I just said, you guys are already used to quoting and paraphrasing, but I want to take it one step further here. So let's say you're looking through the passages of Rinaldi's book thinking, where can I tie my experience to this? And you come across on page 91 where she's talking about how pain is useful. She writes, pain is useful. It focuses your attention to where it's necessary. It's much worse to not feel pain, since if you don't know you're injured, you can't fix what's broken. But the physical, at least in this instance, wasn't nearly as bad as its sister, discomfort. Okay, so let's say that I'm really interested in this first part of the quote. We already know to choose small quotes so that it's primarily our own words taking up the paper. It's your paper after all. You don't want to, have Rinaldi taking over and writing big portions of your paper. Choose a small chunk to then cite in your own paper when you go to write it. And it might look something like this. This is one suggestion. I find that, quote, pain is useful. And I have my citation there when you are running. Notice the student put the citation right next to the quote here. You can put it at the end of the sentence, or you can put it right next to the quote, but it will be correct at the end of the sentence here, okay? I like to use real student examples. While surfing, Rinaldi experienced so much pain and wipeouts, but that taught her how to improve her next wave. Some pain while running taught me how to improve my form and stride. Okay, so this person is connecting Rinaldi's experience to their own. Let's break down how they did that. The first thing they did was select a specific part of the quote from the book where it connects to their own experience. The second thing they did was make sure they had an in-text citation, right? And then the last thing that they did was give an explanation or connection to their own experience. This is the meat of your paper, okay? So when you have the quote, you have to connect it back to your own experience or your lesson learned, right? In this particular case, they were tying it to the pain that they experienced running, which was their midterm activity, and how they used that to improve their form and stride. That's similar to Rinaldi's experience, where she's saying that pain is useful because it can inform you about something that might need correcting, right? So it's not exactly the same, like this person didn't rip themselves a new one like Rinaldi does, but there's a connection there, right? So that is what you want to do with the text here. Okay, couple of tips for organization as you move forward. One is to use transitions throughout your paper. These can be simple transition words like moreover, however, accordingly. There's a website that I'll link that has some really helpful transition words that can be useful for linking ideas. But more importantly than that is that you connect the ideas for your reader. I've read papers that don't use these common transition words, but they still connect the ideas very well for their reader. And that is the important thing, that I can follow you through it, okay? So make sure that you're connecting the ideas both between and within paragraphs. Your explanation of how these ideas are connected is even clearer than a transition, and also helped by a transition word. Make sure you have one main idea per paragraph. So you don't want to be coupling together like lessons learned with your journey to suckage and your evidence of suckage, okay? You want to have one main idea per paragraph as you go through it. Last but not least, check that your thesis statement is the umbrella over your whole paper. If you need to go back and revisit the thesis statements video, it's a good idea to do that, to check and see, what should my thesis statement do for this paper? If it's not doing what it should, you might need to revise the thesis statement or revise the paper. But either way, your thesis should be the umbrella or the main idea of the whole paper. So if there's a part of the paper that it doesn't fit, one of them needs to be edited, either the thesis or the paper itself, okay? Some final tips: read your paper out loud. This can help with any missing words or phrases or something that might make it hard for somebody else to read. or have a friend, family member, or a tutor read it. You have free tutoring available to you, and it's available online as well as in person. So if you need to meet with somebody online, you can. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. Otherwise, have fun turning your outline into a draft, and I look forward to seeing your work online. Take care.